Do you know who the happiest people are? The happiest people are the people with the most intact relationships. In 2016, I answered God's call to start a ministry that would reach youth with the truth about God's plan for sex and marriage. My name is Enza Cerami, and my passion is sharing God's plan for love and life-giving relationships with teens, young adults, and parents. Join me at happiestpeople.org to find out more information.
Hello, I'm Anne.Masters, the Director of the Office for Pastoral Ministry with Persons with Disabilities for the Archdiocese of Newark. I'm excited to be with you today virtually on our topic, Raising a Son or Daughter with a Disability, Believe in Possibilities, some insights from other parents and our faith. Just wanted to share a little bit about my office. The vision of the office is to foster the appreciation of individuals with disabilities as indispensable members of the body of Christ. I'm not sure who is watching this presentation, so it's geared towards parents who may have just had a prenatal diagnosis or a baby born with a disability unexpectedly, or received a diagnosis of a developmental disability as a young child. If your son or daughter is older, it will still be helpful, and feel free to reach out to me. I pray this presentation will provide you with a sense of hope in your new adventure, raising a son or daughter who has a disability. As parents, our job is to launch our sons and daughters into the world to the best of their ability. Even within the same family, this will be different for each of your children because of their individuality. From our Catholic faith, we believe in the value of every person because everyone is created in the image of God. As parents, you may need to remind some of the people you work with regarding your son or daughter about this at times. You will meet parents from 3 families sharing insights from their own experiences and recommendations from a developmental behavioral pediatrician. They all acknowledge a sense of concern about life for their sons and daughters as they grow up. But what they learned is that it's important to believe in possibilities and to let go of expectations that are limiting. This doesn't mean it will be easy, just that it's much more possible than parents expected when they first encounter the experience of disability. As this slide says, it will take knowing your child, building on their strengths, knowing their support needs, and also serving as advocate. But in the early years, it will be for them, and then it will be with them, and then you will fade back as much as possible. Remember, you won't be around forever, so this is important. Planning for success is critical. Take things a day at a time, but also think long term. For all these families, their faith has been very important for them on their journeys. Some introductions. Your guides today will be Ben Hack, who loves to be with people, go out into the community, and to participate in Mass in his parish. Ben has autism. His mother, Mary Beth Walsh. Then Benny Cabrera, who is an artist and also an informal scout leader who looks out for the younger scouts on hikes. Benny also has autism. His parents are Dallas and Ben. Grace McDonald is a sophomore at Syracuse University. She enjoys swimming, hanging out with friends, and designing accessible furniture and other useful items. Grace has Down syndrome. Joy McDonald is her mother. Dr. Peter Smith is a developmental behavioral pediatrician at the University of Chicago and will provide insights from his many years of practice working with individuals with disabilities as they grow into adults and accompanying their families. Typically, when a child is first diagnosed with a disability, parents often feel a sense of disorientation and concern. What are your attitudes and perceptions of disability? Your child will depend on you to believe in their fundamental value as a person and their ability to learn and develop with appropriate supports and opportunities. Society decides what personal characteristics are valued, which historically focuses on independence, strength, skin color, and wealth. Anyone who doesn't match these characteristics then are marginalized. The experience of feeling different can be hard. Fortunately, society is becoming more aware of such issues, but you may still be influenced by its lingering presence. Parents say that once they admit to these attitudes, they're able to change their perspective and accept the unique individual their child is. Identifying your questions, your expectations, and your fears gets them out into the open where they can be addressed. What is disability? Disability has been with us throughout human history, but the way it's talked about and understood continues to change. In modern times, disability for the longest time has been considered a medical condition, something that needed a diagnosis to be treated and cured. And any condition that couldn't be cured was considered a tragedy. This is what's known as the medical model of disability. The disability rights movement has led to increased access to education, community participation, employment, transportation, building access, etc., and typically focuses on what is known as the social model of disability. This emphasizes barriers imposed by physical environments, practices, and attitudes, and it seeks to create access by removing them. However, a more integrated understanding of disability recognizes that even the understanding of disability continues to evolve. And essentially, it's an interaction between impairments or conditions, attitudinal, environmental barriers, and how things are done that restrict access to the ordinary things of a fully human life. Both the social and integrated models recognize the person with a disability as a person, someone who has gifts, needs, and rights like everyone else. Although the more recent integrated models of disability affirm the person in their fullness, in everyday language, there is still a tendency to focus on deficits rather than abilities when talking about persons with disabilities. So as parents, you'll need to be prepared for that. Dr. Peter Smith will talk about this. There's much diversity within disability. There's not just one experience. It will depend on when it occurs, whether prenatally, at birth, during development, from an accident, or the aging process itself. And there are also different kinds of disabilities that are named here. The experience of being born with a disability is different than when it occurs later in life and involves loss of an ability, particularly if from a significant accident. And then aging brings changes that are a natural part of it, which impact what we are able to do both physically and mentally. There's also diversity with any particular disability. My son and I both have ADHD. However, while we share some aspects about it, not everything. For example, he needs to listen to music in order to concentrate. Well, I can't listen to music then. I need quiet. Disability is part of the diversity of what it means to be human. It is the normal and anticipated outcome of the risks, strains, and stresses of the living process itself occurring in utero, at the moment of birth, or at any stage along the life cycle. Therefore, it ceases to be merely an individual tragedy and becomes an expectation within any community. With technology today, conditions discovered at birth a generation ago are now discovered prenatally. Parents can see images and learn about their unborn child. Yet, they're often unprepared for a prenatal diagnosis and have conflicting emotions. Know that you don't need to face this alone. There are people who can accompany you. The quote on this slide is from the U.S. Bishop's Revised Guidelines on Celebration of the Sacraments with Persons with Disabilities, and it talks about the importance for pastoral accompaniment in parishes. There are also ministries that provide perinatal hospice accompaniment, such as Be Not Afraid. It's important to remember that not all tests are created equally. Some are diagnostic, and some are more suggestive of possibilities. These pictures are of Giorgio, from when he was first born up until 4 years old. Here, he's relishing an ice cream cone with his Nona. Giorgio's parents were encouraged to abort him because x-rays indicated his stomach was disconnected. They refused, and then another doctor reviewed the x-rays and realized that the issues could be resolved with an operation after he was born. Yes, Giorgio hasn't always had an easy life, and it hasn't been an easy start, but he is loved and thriving. Here's a picture of Loretta May. Her mother Leah shared with me about their family's short time with their daughter, who was born with a life-limiting condition at birth known as trisomy 18. It's a rare genetic condition which the neonatalist described as incompatible with life. Leah says, "We were told our baby would live 2 to 3 days or 2 to 3 months at the most. We took her home, and at first we were just waiting for her to die, but then we started living with her. Then we enjoyed all the beauty of a young growing family with walks in the park, family outings, and our annual family vacation. It turned out the doctors were wrong about so much. Our baby thrived amidst the hustle and bustle of a young family. Sadly, however, they were right about one thing. Our daughter did not live to see her first birthday. She died at 8 months of age. The Sonic family grieved when Loretta May died, but they also have wonderful memories from her short life. A prenatal diagnosis wouldn't have changed this for them. But Leah knows that other families need to know about experiences like theirs. A large study on abortions found that parents who receive a prenatal diagnosis typically decide to have an abortion 80% of the time if they're not told about perinatal hospice services and support. A survey of families who received such support from Be Not Afraid unanimously reported that they would make the same decision again and carry their baby to term. Joy, Mary Beth, Odalis, and Ben will now talk about their expectations and surprises as parents of a son or daughter who has a significant disability.
What were your feelings when you learned I have Down syndrome?
What were my feelings when I learned you had Down syndrome? I have to be honest with you, Grace. It was a little scary at first because I wasn't quite sure what that was going to mean. And there's a lot of ideas out there. Most of the ideas, at least when you were born, were not super positive about people with Down syndrome. So I was a little scared, I have to be honest.
How about Dad?
Was Dad scared? I don't know if Dad was as scared as Mommy. Mommy probably talked about it more. Dad was a little bit more quiet about it. So first we were a little scared when we thought that's might what happened.
What wisdom have you learned through life with me?
What wisdom have I learned through life with you? That I shouldn't have been scared. I shouldn't have been scared when I found out you had Down syndrome. That you have taught us, well, first of all, people always say that you're lucky that we're your parents. But I think that we are lucky to have you as a daughter. Because Down syndrome isn't scary at all. You're just a person like anybody else. And you kind of taught us that. And think about this, Grace. How have you surprised me? You're a continual surprise. I mean, like, we didn't know what was going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with any kid. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen with Shannon. We didn't know what was going to happen with Brandon. We didn't know what was going to happen with you, right? But to watch you grow, to watch you become the young lady you're becoming, to know that you are in college, to know, like, to watch you have a great network of friends, to watch you do a job, to watch your determination, because you don't really give up. And when you really want something, you go for it. And also your sense of, like, of knowing that something's right for you or something's going to happen for you. And even if I doubt it, you know it's going to happen. And Grace, 9 times out of 10, you're right on target. You know it's going to happen, and you're right.
But when he was little, everyone said, you know, when your child's about 14 and they start going to meetings, they get to be their own advocate. They can say what they want, and their self-advocacy is valued in the community of people with disabilities. And that is true. And for a long time, I thought that was out of our reach. Like, Ben's not going to be able to tell you what his dreams are or what job he wants to do as an adult or what he's hoping for. But through his experience at church, especially post-confirmation, as he's gotten involved in doing more and more things, and more people go out of their way to greet him, and he goes out of their way to greet him, he's just become more connected to the community. I realized he has become his own best advocate. He's a fabulous self-advocate, and he's raised everyone's expectations about what an individual with autism and significantly limited language is really capable of.
I never had any expectations. I just accepted my son as he was and just loved him through it regardless. You always hope for him to do better, and he does. And what has surprised me is how caring he really is, and loving and kind. And I see that with him, even though he doesn't interact a lot with people, but he has a lot of care. He's very loving, and he just
Yeah, he's focused on others. Yeah, you could see that.
All the time.
In the Scouts, for example, he takes care. He's the one who always watching to make sure the group is always together. That the Scouts are all. He doesn't. He's the last Scout. He doesn't leave a room or he doesn't leave an area without all of the other Scouts in front of him. So as an exit. But I think that for me, what has been a little bit of a surprise has been the fact that first of all, it hasn't been as hard as I thought it was going to be in the beginning. For example, there was a time when we were concerned whether he would ever take a pill, something as simple as that. So he has, as he's grown and matured, like you do in life, and he has, continued to learn, and he continues to do things. 3 weeks ago, I never thought I would see him do it, and 3 weeks ago, giving the sensory challenges that you have when you have autism, when we were at Scout Camp, he did a zip line, which completely blew me away because I never expected him to do it. So I think there've been a number of surprises in that sense.
Dr. Smith will talk about his conversations with parents at the beginning of the journey.
My name is Peter Smith. I'm a doctor at the University of Chicago, and my specialty is developmental behavioral pediatrics. So I get to meet people like you in my work, and it's one of the best parts of my job. I've learned so much from family members, parents of children with disabilities, people who really walk the walk, who taught me a great deal about what it is to be a parent and to be a human, and helped me to be a better person, better doctor, and better father. I'd like to share with you some of the insights that they've taught me over the years, and maybe they'll be of help to you. I think the biggest insight is that we're all in this together, that it can seem very isolating to have children who are different than other people, especially at the beginning. And there's a huge community of people surrounding the children with disability and their families. And one of my roles in life is helping connect people with that larger community. And I would encourage you to do that. And these communities are multifaceted and geographically very different, but they exist everywhere. And I've worked in many parts of the country. Second piece that people have taught me is parents can feel ambiguous and ambivalent and torn. One of the jobs that I have is meeting children who are young, usually under age 3, whose parents are concerned about their development. And they come to me and the team that I'm part of, and we try to help them find what's going on, and potentially even find a diagnosis that fits for them and their child. And sometimes the family come and they're pretty sure they know what's going on, that they're come to an expert to confirm it. One of those families one time said to me something that I thought was so profound, and they said, "Dr. Smith, we thought our son had autism. We read up on it. We knew what was going on. We came to you to tell us that maybe we were wrong, and we had that as part of our thinking about coming here." And I totally get that. They love their son, and actually I've followed him the years, and he's doing well. But there is something difficult about being different and about having different expectations and different experiences. And that's a process and a journey that we all go through as parents, but it's a particular kind of journey when your children have difficulties and differentness. And the third point that families have made to me is that doctors, people like myself, clinicians, therapists, they can often be real pessimists and real Debbie Downers. And there's no reason for that. That the vast majority of those things that I help people with, disabilities and medical complexity and impairments, the vast majority are doing so much better now than they've ever done in the history of the planet, because we have therapies and we have medicines and we have interventions that work and that make things better. And so many times, especially if it's an older clinician, they're reflecting their experiences from 20, 40, or even longer years ago when things were worse. And so don't buy into that the future in this world is almost certainly better than the past. And so what you read and what you hear is almost certainly worse than the future that you have. And to fall into that rabbit hole, which is so easy to do on Dr. Google or wherever you go, is usually something that is depressing in a way that doesn't necessarily need to be. And that's not to sweep things under the rug. There can be real struggles and difficulties of being a parent with children with disability. I don't mean to be a Pollyanna, but it doesn't have to be all negative all the time. And I early in my career had one father sort of tell me sheepishly, sort of under his breath, she's our favorite. She's the easiest of them all. This young girl had Down syndrome. And they had been a family who was very worried pre-pregnancy or pre-delivery during pregnancy, and their experience was so much better than they had anticipated. So I would encourage you to be open for the joy that can be there, to be connected to the people who can help you, and to be okay with ambivalence, that it's not all joy, it's not all happiness. You can have sad feelings, that's okay. But we're in this together and we can get through it together. And I hope this is helpful to you.
Parents typically struggle with taking care of themselves, particularly when any of their children have significant support needs. However, Cheryl Castellano, the executive director of Mom to Mom, points out that on an airplane we are told to put on our own oxygen mask first, before our child or anyone else. If you pass out from lack of oxygen, you won't be any help to someone else. So taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's critical for your well-being and your child's. And from a faith perspective, it's also honoring the gift of life we receive from God. Be gentle with yourself when you make mistakes, which you will do. We all do. Just learn from them and go on. This is also an invaluable lesson we can teach our children, both by modeling it and also with our expectations of them. And when you're struggling, share that instead of holding it in, thinking you need to be strong. There's lots of evidence that says this improves physical and mental health, whereas holding it in can lead to recurrent health problems. Your marriage also requires attention for it to be strong enough to manage the many challenges you'll face in life. This doesn't have to be expensive dates that are often logistical nightmares to set up. It can be simply taking advantage of moments in daily life, like a quiet cup of coffee or a glass of wine together, paying attention to each other and being interested in what's going on with your spouse. You are partners on a journey that includes raising and launching your children into the world. Studies show that parents typically have complementary roles and that both are important. Together, you're a team. Your family is made up of individuals that together form a whole. So as parents, having time with each child individually is important, but also having time together as a family, celebrating life together. Okay, now I can tell you saying, no problem, and with your eyes rolled. But remember, you're not supposed to be doing this alone. Dr. Smith talked about that already, and you notice it in the stories from Joy, Mary Beth, and Odalis, and Ben. It's an important predictor also of parent well-being. Other predictors are problem-solving ability, access to resources, environmental supports, and parent recognition of obstacles. The strong social support network can help with all of these. Studies have found this, and it's reinforced by experience from families shared with me. Families develop support networks from their extended family, parish, other parents, school, neighborhood, and support services. You'll find some people aren't helpful, even in your own extended family. Don't let them wear you down. As Dr. Smith said, turn to people that are positive. On one of your handouts is listed organizations in New Jersey and elsewhere that could be helpful for you. Then there's advice from Linda Weisneck, a licensed social worker at Bergen County Special Services. She says many parents feel overwhelmed in the beginning. Get a notebook and just keep track of all the information of your conversations that you have. Write everything down, put the date, name of the person that you were talking to, and contact information. You may not be ready or need that particular information then, but you'll have it when you need it, so in the future you'll know where to find it. Now Dr. Smith will talk about preparing for the future.
When talking to families about the future, I have two different kinds of things that I think are important to happen. The first is, especially early in life, to have families have concrete things that they're working towards so they don't get too far ahead of themselves. And I usually frame it around therapies in school. So for instance, if the child's in preschool, the next thing that we're working on together is the transition to kindergarten. What's going to need to happen for the child to be successful in kindergarten? Some of that's administrative, some of it's like, what therapy goals do we have? If the child's in 6th or 7th grade, we start thinking about what's the transition to high school look like, and what will be needed for that, and what are the options the family has. Same thing in high school for post-high school. So each step along the way, looking one step further and not too much further. To have a general goal is okay, because that's the second thing I encourage families to do. Is from an early age, I encourage them to see the strengths and the passions and the things that their child who's becoming an older child and becoming an adult, what strengths and passions they have that could be part of their future. What vocational goals fit with their passions and goals. And so working towards a more concrete, specific future can sometimes be helpful. Now, there's limitations to that, but that's why early in life, working with the child, not just in formal therapies, but maybe through gardening or through other hobbies that are in the home, cooking or walking the dog and being in the neighborhood or volunteering at the pet store. I mean, what are the passions this child has, and how could they blossom into something bigger for the future? That includes vocational, but it also includes things that we do outside of our jobs.
Letting go is hard.
The problem is the better job you do, the better you get at your job, the better or the more that you want your child to stay that way because you're doing a good job, you're being successful. And the problem is for all of us parents is if we're really good at one stage, the children turn to some other stage, and all of a sudden we have to use a different skill set. You know, the easy baby turns into the difficult toddler, you know, turns into the more easy, school, still love you, daddy, to the teenager who doesn't want you around at all because you're embarrassing. And that's true for all parents. And that's true for these journeys too, that, I had a mom who was very upset because her daughter wasn't talking, and another person had told her, well, she's not talking by 3, she's never going to talk, which is not true. And she was very tearful, and I just saw her this week, a televisit, and she came to me and I said, no, she's making progress. See, here, and here, she's making this good progress. I think that talking's coming. She's doing other things. And I said, I bet you someday, maybe when she's a teenager, you're going to come to me and say, Dr. Smith, can you get her to stop talking so much? And I sort of said this, and we laughed together, and we got through that crisis. Well, fast forward now 15 years, and the girl is 18. And 2 years ago, when she was 16, they came to see me. And Dad had come to some of the visits, but he was busy, and so didn't always. He came to this one with, that's not necessarily a good sign. And they hadn't called ahead to say what the visit was about. And Dad was white as a sheet. I was like, well, what's going on? And the girl is generally healthy, so I didn't know what's going on. And she had learned to talk along the way. But we were going in there, and she was just jibber jabbering along. She was so excited and happy. She was the happiest I've ever seen her. She was a 16-year-old girl, and she was dressed, fashionably. Her parents are fashionable. And so she sat down, and I didn't catch because I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I was bringing him into the room. And Mom said, because Dad couldn't talk, Mom said, we're here because we need to talk about her new boyfriend. And Dad was just aghast. And the girl started describing him and all the different things they were going to do together. And Mom said, she turned without even thinking and said, could you please be quiet for a second while I explain what's going on to Dr. Smith, because he doesn't know all this. And she was being kind. And I said, oh, wait a second. Didn't you remember that one time I said, you're going to tell me to get her to talk less? Well, you just did it. And she burst out in laughter, and so did the husband, by the way, because it sort of broke the ice and all. But it was a fun journey. The girl has difficulties still, and she graduated from high school, but is in a transition program now. But the difficulties of the future aren't always the difficulties that people perceive that they are, and it's important for families to to let go of it. And the example I use is for any child to walk, you have to let go, but then they fall down and get stitches, and you feel badly as a parent. Well, but that's the nature of it, and that's the nature of all parenting. And if you've been more protective because your child is perceived as, and sometimes really is more vulnerable, then that's even harder. One of the exercises I give to families just for this reason, and I write this in my notes, I say, what you need to do is you need to take a vacation without any children, just the two of you, for at least 5 days every 12 months. And you think I'm telling you to do that so that you get a break. And I think that is an important thing, that you get a break. But I'm much more important about Susie or whoever is your son or daughter, because if you do that, then you're practicing allowing them to be independent. And, first it's a weekend vacation. They're like, whoa, no one can take care of my kids. And I said, well, you have these therapists in the child's life, and you have these teachers. They're young people, and they often need extra cash. Ask them if they can. And if that's not going to work, there's other families who have children, who are like yours. Maybe you can swap them, but start with a weekend, just a few miles away, and then do, but you got to expand. It's got to be at least 5 days, because families tell me the first day they call every 2 hours. The second day they call 2 or 3 times. On the third day, they have 2 margaritas and just forget them, and that's what they need to do. And so that's one of the ways, because when you come back, your child will look different and it'll be more independent. And you don't want the first time for that child to be away from you to be their overnight camp, or God forbid going to college, because then you're not setting them up for success. You're setting them up for anxieties and failure. So, and it's good for them as a couple.
Here the parents share about lessons learned, and they all acknowledge a sense of concern about the life that their sons and daughters will live as they grow up. But they also talk about overcoming this and believing in possibilities, letting go of all expectations.
I got very good advice from behaviorists early on saying, think long term. Don't just plan for tomorrow, plan for it. So even when he was 5 or 6, I knew I never just wanted him to make his first Eucharist. I always instead wanted him to be equipped to be a full participating member of a community that valued him for his whole life, because it's something that he can carry with him anywhere and he can participate in even when I won't be around anymore to facilitate that. So
you're at the beginning of the beginning, right? The very start, and don't immediately jump to conclusion to where that child is going to go, how he or she is going to develop, what type of life she will have or he will have. This is a marathon. It's certainly not a sprint, and it's a lifelong marathon. And what you need to do is you need to take it a day at a time and see how things develop and evolve. So these are the things that I think that I tell parents when they're that I've talked to and I've met that have had their child just recently diagnosed, that this is it's a 4-quarter game, and they're in the first minute of the first quarter, and the game will there's any number of paths that this game can take, and to relax and just deal with it as it comes.
We were going to the Mets game and we're walking in the stadium. There's so many people and everything. And to my daughter, where's Benny? And she's like, Mom, he's in the back. He's fine. And we're like, okay, we have to trust that he's behind us and everything is fine. Sometimes, and this is part of what my faith is, that you just have to give it to God. And you got to trust that even though,
Even though,
I don't know,
even though,
that God always has him, because there's going to be a time where we are not going to be in front of him, but God would always be behind him. Sorry.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's we're not always there, so he's going to be on his own.
What's the basic message I have for a parent raising a son or daughter with a developmental disability? Let go of all expectations, especially negative ones, because your fears, like my fears, could have held you back, but you kept pushing us, and so we had to let go of being afraid and let you do what you need to do. So I would say, any fears are really parent problems. It's really not the kid. So you got to let go of being afraid.
I'm a dad. I'm really sad.
I think they all feel the same way. I think that we all learned that you had a lot to teach us. We had to let go of our maybe somewhat negative expectations, but we had to let you just be grace. And once we let you be grace, things are a lot better. Right? Maybe this sign is perfect. Should have that for us. Let your faith be bigger than your fear. Because that's really what it's about, to be honest with you. Because anything that's ever held Grace back is because we've been scared, not because she's not been willing to do it. We just sort of have to figure it out and go with what her lead is.
Begin by presuming ability and valuing your sons and daughter for who they are, created in the image of God. Just a quick summary from what we've listened to build on strengths and also develop a support network that's going to support you throughout life. Specifics will depend on the particular needs and abilities of your son or daughter. Some individuals may need strong support network for their whole life. Practices that will help with this also include strategies for supported decision making, to provide lots of practice for them to do this, which is how we all learn, right? And then also supported interdependence allows for the needs of a particular person. So we don't have to think of totally separate, secluded environments versus independent. there can be that supported interdependent experience through a network of people, could come from family and also community. And also remember to take care of yourself, your marriage, your family, developing that support network with relationships and information. Based on this presentation, what experiences and suggestions surprised you? What seems the most challenging for you right now? What's most helpful? Reflect on this together with your spouse. Do you have questions still to be answered? And who can help you out with these? Make sure to feel free to contact me if you're not sure about your next step or who can help you. This shows my website, www.rcan.org/disabilities, and gives you an idea of some of the things that you can find on it. I'd like to leave you with these thoughts from a poem by Holly Holtwall. It's If Only Children Came with Instructions. It's from a book, Cries, Wisdom, and Hope for Parenting Children with Developmental Challenges. If only children came with instructions, then parenting wouldn't be so much trial and error and trial, and more error. Did I do the right thing? Responding to her meltdown, challenging him to do more. When I look back on my days as a parent, none are error-free. Some are good and bad, some are just bad. If children did come with instructions, would I be a better parent? Or would I be more concerned about following the instructions than loving my child? Getting to know her smile, watching actions and reactions, reading his facial cues. Would I let my child teach me, lead me, help me, to make things up as we went along? Would I have learned to love deeply my child for who she is, to find joy in things big or small, to feel pain in ways I never thought possible for him, to hope for things yet unseen, to be challenged beyond belief, to still be standing through it all? Maybe, but maybe not. Yet this is my story now, still unfolding, still progressing. I find my way as a parent without instructions. As Joy said, let your faith be bigger than your fear. I pray this presentation has been helpful for you to realize that although you may have fears and concerns, there is much joy and celebrations of life to look forward to. And know that you are not alone. I would like to thank all the people listed here particularly for sharing some of their experiences with you.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.